Choosing someone to take over a role from another actor is never easy, especially when the original actor drew praise for their take on a character. But recasting is often an unavoidable fact of filmmaking, especially for sequels and remakes. Whether it's creative disagreements, financial setbacks, or simple timing issues at hand, actors often become unavailable to resume their roles and must be replaced. Sometimes, the newcomer can blend right into the blockbuster scene unnoticed. But in the case of these casting switcheroos, the change was just too drastic for audiences to endure. Clarice Starling. When director Ridley Scott signed on to direct the Silence of the Lambs sequel, he did so without his Clarice Starling in place. Anthony Hopkins had already negotiated a return to the role of Hannibal Lecter, but Jodie Foster didn't share his enthusiasm for the second chapter in the serial killer story, despite winning an Oscar for the role in the first film. She later told Total Film, "The official reason I didn't do Hannibal is I was doing another movie, Flora Plum. So I get to say, in a nice, dignified way, that I wasn't available when that movie was being shot. But Clarice meant so much to Lamb's director Jonathan Demme and I, there was no way that either of us could really trample on her."
Now that's really interesting, Clarice. I'm really pressed for time.
Several big-name actresses were considered to take her place, and the part ultimately went to Julianne Moore. While both Scott and Hopkins were happy with the choice, audiences weren't as convinced. Moore was inevitably compared to Foster and couldn't measure up to her predecessor's screen savvy, nor rekindle the creepy connection Clarice had shared with Hopkins in the first film. Jodie Foster offered her own diplomatic but shady take on the film, saying simply, "I saw Hannibal, I won't comment." Evelyn O'Connell. The Mummy was a surprise smash for Universal, posting global receipts of $415 million and landing on the top 10 highest-grossing films in 1999. It launched Brendan Fraser's career as a Hollywood action hero and introduced the world to a stunning new leading lady in Rachel Weisz. The pair made a compelling on-screen couple and reprised their roles in The Mummy Returns, which managed to bring in a nice haul from the box office as well. But by the time the third film came around, Weisz was suffering from some serious mummy fatigue and stepped aside. Weisz was rumored to call the script for The Mummy 3 crap, so the studio turned to Maria Bello to fill in for the role.
That should give us a good advantage.
Unfortunately for Bello, her turn in the role was criticized for lacking the charm of the original, and the film failed to recoup its production cost in the domestic box office.
Why am I laughing?
The Genie. The 90s marked a moment of resurgence for Disney's animated film collection, with films like Beauty and the Beast and The Lion King offering a new generation of children some cartoon movies to sing along to. One of Disney's most beloved films of the era was Aladdin, an Oscar-winning take on the Arabic folktale about the street thief who sheds his rags and won the heart of a princess. Aladdin was packed full of great musical numbers, but the main reason it became such a smash was the input of the late Robin Williams as the genie.
It's all part and parcel the whole genie gig.
Phenomenal cosmic powers!
The actor confirmed that he wouldn't be lending his voice to the direct-to-video sequel The Return of Jafar, after an alleged row with Disney over its marketing tactics. So the search for a new genie began. Dan Castellaneta, the legendary voice of Homer Simpson, was ultimately chosen to voice the big blue guy. But the Simpsons star just couldn't measure up to Williams' frenetic performance. The quality of the animation didn't help matters, but Castellaneta lacked the unpredictability that Williams brought to the genie, essentially doing a watered-down impression of his predecessor.
Dope!
Jack Ryan. There are 5 films based on Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan books, but only one actor has played the protagonist twice. Eyebrows were raised when Alec Baldwin was given the boot after he successfully debuted Ryan on screen in The Hunt for Red October. Baldwin later implied that the studio had gone behind his back and entered into negotiations with Ford to take the role of Ryan.
Well, that was a guess, but it seemed logical.
Even so, Ford's performance in Patriot Games and Clear and Present Danger became definitive for the character. 8 years later, another actor stepped in to bring a much younger version of Jack Ryan to the big screen. This time, it was Ben Affleck who stepped in for the sum of all fears. His performance in the role was met with disdain, however, and the Jack Ryan franchise never really recovered after that, despite an attempt to reboot it with Chris Pine in the lead role more than a decade later. Sarah Connor. Following in the footsteps of Linda Hamilton as Sarah Connor in the Terminator franchise was never going to be easy for any actress. Hamilton gave a performance so layered and compelling that even the most talented performers have struggled to do the character justice. The first to give it a shot was Lena Headey, who was cast in the role in the short-lived TV series Terminator: The Sarah Connor Chronicles. Fox canceled the show after 2 seasons, citing its high cost as a reason. But Hetty's Game of Thrones colleague Emilia Clarke was willing to give it another go on the silver screen for Terminator Genisys. The film was a box office dud and was heavily criticized for using the old time travel chestnut to rewrite the beginning of the Terminator story to suit the filmmaker's purposes. The main problem wasn't the infuriatingly muddled timeline, though, it was the casting. As much as TV lovers might dig Clarke's portrayal of Daenerys Targaryen in Game of Thrones, the film crowd was decidedly not wowed by her run as Sarah Connor, where her line deliveries packed a lot less punch than the original.
Come with me if you want to live.
Pass. Van Wilder. National Lampoon's Van Wilder isn't going to be preserved in the Library of Congress National Film Registry anytime soon. Yet, for all of its failings, fans of a certain age remember this movie fondly. This was a time when frat humor was at its peak, and sitting down to watch a comedy usually meant turning your brain off for 90 minutes. Van Wilder might not have been the most cerebral comedy of all time, but Ryan Reynolds still delivered as the fast-talking cool guy who threw the best parties and was a softie underneath all those crazy antics. After the Kal Penn-led sequel was destroyed by critics, the producers decided their next move was a prequel featuring a younger version of Van Wilder. So they brought in Mean Girl's Jonathan Bennett for Van Wilder freshman year, which was a terrible mistake.
I have never seen such a sorry display in all my life.
The actor couldn't come close to the charisma of his predecessor and produced a feature-length, failed impression effort as a result. Willie Mays Hayes. Major League was a surprise grand slam for Paramount Pictures and produced 2 increasingly terrible sequels. And while Charlie Sheen's Wild Thing came back for a second round at the mound in Major League 2, there was another standout actor from the first film who refused to run the bases of this franchise again. Wesley Snipes, whose charming swagger as the speedy base thief was a home run in the first movie, had no interest in returning to the dugout for the second movie. At the time, he was well on his way to becoming a Hollywood MVP in his own right, thanks to movies like White Men Can't Jump and Demolition Man, so he pretty much priced himself out of the second movie. With the Cleveland Indians down a man on their roster, the filmmakers turned to relative newcomer Omar Epps to sub in as a pinch runner for the project. Unfortunately, Epps didn't have a strong background in comedy, and his performance was the cinematic equivalent of a foul ball.
Read some of your reviews, man. One guy said Willie Mays Hayes couldn't play Deb.
Just a bit outside. Albus Dumbledore. The Prisoner of Azkaban might still be a favorite among some Harry Potter fans, thanks to the arrival of Sirius Black and that wild Whomping Willow. But the fact remains that it's the lowest grossing movie in the franchise, and for many, the subdued enthusiasm seems to stem from the unfortunate arrival of a new Hogwarts headmaster in the film. Richard Harris's take on Albus Dumbledore in the first 2 movies had become definitive for Potter fans, so when the actor died after a battle with Hodgkin's disease, the filmmakers had to turn to another actor to step into the beloved professor's cloak. Michael Gambon seemed like a fine choice to conjure up for the franchise, but his performance in his first run as Dumbledore was stunted by the fact that he never read the books. Rather than resuming Harris's spellbindingly calm and wise demeanor, Gambon delivered a much more stern and aggressive version of the character for his first few outings.
Harry, you put your name in a goblet of fire.
No, sir.
You asked one of the older students to do it for you?
No, sir.
You're absolutely sure?
Yes.
Gambon would later summon up the same sort of chill pill that saved the role from being ruined for children across the globe. But these moments of mismatching between the beloved book character and the screen interpretation still cost the movies many house points in the eyes of the true Potter fanatics. Catwoman. Halle Berry taking over Michelle Pfeiffer's role in Catwoman is perhaps the most infamous example of recasting going terribly wrong. DC's leather-clad heroine has appeared in numerous Batman adaptations over the years, but Pfeiffer's psychotically sexy performance in Tim Burton's Batman Returns remains the cat's meow.
I don't know about you, Miss Kitty, but I feel so much yummier.
The actress initially intended to reprise the role in the Solo spin-off, but after years of development woes, her patience reached its limit and she decided to concentrate on other commitments. After a rigorous recruiting process, Berry was ultimately chosen to climb into the catsuit, and what a mess it all was. The film was a complete disaster, bombing hard at the box office while cleaning up at the Razzies. Berry took her Worst Actress win in good humor and even turned up to accept her award in person. Batman. Another error in judgment from the Batman universe occurred when Michael Keaton handed over the keys for Wayne Manor to Val Kilmer. Keaton had portrayed the role in 1989's Batman and its sequel Batman Returns, but he refused to reprise the role in a third film after reading the screenplay. When pressed for details, Keaton later said that the script he was shown sucked, and that it was just awful, pointing the blame for his departure squarely at the writers. Val Kilmer clearly didn't share Keaton's opinion. The Tombstone star accepted the role and went into the film knowing he'd have to contend with a wide cast of wacky villains as well as a new director. Joel Schumacher ultimately shouldered a lot of the blame for the badness of Batman Forever, though his leading man didn't escape criticism.
What am I?
Please! You're as blind as a bat!
He was quickly replaced with George Clooney in Batman and Robin. The good news for Kilmer is that Clooney's turn as the Dark Knight wasn't any more loved than his own. And soon everyone forgot about Kilmer's turn in the Batmobile.
Forget it, take it off. It's Val Kilmer.
Oh, you're an actor.
Most of us are used to the idea of an actor getting a role and, acting the part. We'll even accept a stunt double for scenes where the actor needs to jump out of a plane. But for the most part, if we're watching Gary Busey, we want to see Gary Busey. Wait, why do we want to see Gary Busey again? As it turns out, we're not always watching who we think we're watching, and that happens much more often than we realize. There have been plenty of times when actors were swapped out and us in the audience never even noticed. Natalie Portman. The heated kiss between Thor and Jane Foster in Thor: The Dark World's post-credits scene is one of the steamiest moments in all the Marvel movies, and with good reason. Actor Chris Hemsworth isn't making out with his co-star Natalie Portman. The scene was shot after principal photography had wrapped, and Natalie Portman was unavailable. Portman told the New York Daily News, "I couldn't get there because I was working on my own film, and so they put his wife in my wig and costume. That's why it was so passionate." Yep, Hemsworth was locking lips with his real-life wife, Spanish actress and Fast and Furious star Elsa Pataky. The switcheroo certainly saved a lot of trouble for the crew. While filming other kissing scenes in the Thor series, Portman said that since she's so short, they usually had a ramp for me to walk up so I could land somewhere near his face, because that's the only way to make this turn into something like this. Bruce Lee. After Bruce Lee's untimely death on July 20th, 1973, one of his greatest passion projects was left unfinished, Game of Death, of which Lee had already filmed about 40 minutes. 5 years later, director Robert Klaus picked up the pieces and was forced to create a brand new plot using Lee's previously filmed scenes, shots from older Bruce Lee projects, and even footage from Lee's real-life funeral. In addition to archival film, Klaus also hired stand-ins to play Billy Lowe, Lee's character in the new version of Game of Death. In Klaus's Game of Death, Lowe both receives plastic surgery after a brutal fight and later fakes his own death and wears a disguise, making it easy for Klaus to replace Lee with other actors, although some parts weren't exactly seamless.
Well, sitting right there by the telephone, just waiting for you to call. With patience, that's not one of our virtues.
Michael Pitt. It's hard to imagine anyone more villainous than Hannibal Lecter, but the TV series Hannibal gave us just such character in Mason Verger. As the sadistic meat-packing tycoon, Boardwalk Empire star Michael Pitt spends the latter half of the show's second season tormenting the other characters. Pitt delivers a terrifying performance as Verger, who showrunner Brian Fuller called the Joker to Hannibal's Batman. But while Mason Verger returned in Season 3, Michael Pitt didn't. Joe Anderson took over the role and had to spend the entirety of the season covered in heavy prosthetics. Fortunately, Anderson's vocal performance was flawless, resulting in a seamless transition between the two actors.
Now I can talk face to face.
Nicholas Brendon. Nicholas Brendon appeared in all but one episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and yet, surprisingly, he wasn't the only person to play Xander Harris, Buffy's geeky pal and perennial punching bag. Brendan's twin brother, who uses the stage name Kelly Donovan, often took Brendan's place when the actor wasn't available or when Buffy's supernatural shenanigans required more than one Xander on screen at once. Donovan made his most memorable appearance on Buffy in the 5th season episode The Replacement, in which a demon creates a second Xander who threatens to take over the original's life. In the episode Intervention, Donovan replaced Brendan entirely during some action scenes when Brendan had pneumonia and couldn't come to the set. Gene Hackman. It might be hard to imagine now, but in the 70s, only one big-budget superhero franchise ruled the silver screen. Even before the first Superman film became a breakout hit, director Richard Donner was already working on a sequel. Unfortunately, during filming, Donner clashed with producers Ilya and Alexander Salkind about the film's budget. And although Donner had filmed roughly 75% of Superman 2 during production of the first film, he was replaced by A Hard Day's Night's Richard Lester. In order to secure a director's credit, Lester reshot quite a bit of Donner's footage, substantially changing Superman 2's story and tone in the process. The way the Salkinds treated Donner didn't set well with the cast. Reportedly, Christopher Reeve was openly furious about Donner's dismissal. According to the book Superman vs. Hollywood, Gene Hackman, who played Lex Luthor in both films, flat out refused to show up to finish shooting Superman 2. With Hackman absent, Lester and the Salkinds were forced to use body doubles and voice impersonators just to finish the movie. Josh Pence. In 2010, Armie Hammer made headlines and picked up a couple of awards for his portrayal of identical twins Cameron and Tyler Winklevoss in The Social Network. But he couldn't have done it alone. On the set, Tyler was actually played by Gangster Squad star Josh Pence. Later, Pence's face was digitally replaced with Hammer's by the special effects team. In order to prepare for the dual roles, Hammer and Pence attended a twin boot camp, where together they worked out each twin brother's particular quirks and mannerisms. And while Pence's career hasn't taken off like Hammer's, he's become more positive about his Social Network experience over time. Josh Dallas. For such a small role, Marvel Studios sure had a lot of trouble casting Fandral the Dashing, the Asgardian warrior. First, Chuck star Zachary Levi was set to play the goateed Asgardian, but had to drop out when NBC ordered more episodes of Chuck's third season. Next, Marvel cast Queen of the Damned star Stuart Townsend in the role, but Townsend departed shortly before filming due to mysterious creative differences. Marvel eventually found its Fandral in a then unknown actor named Josh Dallas, who finally brought the classic character to the screen. But the trouble didn't stop there. Between Thor's premiere and the start of filming on Thor: The Dark World, Dallas landed the role of Prince Charming on ABC's fairy tale drama Once Upon a Time. Because of Once Upon a Time's rigorous shooting schedule, Dallas couldn't join his fellow warriors for their big screen return, and Marvel needed to recast the part. Their choice? Zachary Levi, of course, who was finally free to take the role.
Perhaps next time we should start with the big one.
Penelope Cruz. Monica Cruz had been an accomplished dancer and actress for years, and while she's had featured roles in several foreign movies, she's probably most famous in America for her part in Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides, in which she played her sister, Penelope. Penelope took over from Keira Knightley in Rob Marshall's 2010 sequel and played the part of Angelica, Jack Sparrow's love interest. While filming, though, Penelope learned that she was pregnant. In order to minimize the risk to Penelope's unborn baby, Marshall hired Monica, who looks a lot like her older sister, to serve as a stand-in. In an interview with The Telegraph, Penelope said, "I did a couple of months of training and did what I was able to do, but I couldn't do everything, just what was safe." Monica came at the end to do some scenes. She's a dancer and very good with the sword because she's done a film herself. Neither Penelope nor Monica returned in Pirates of the Caribbean: Dead Men Tell No Tales, but the Cruz family is still a big part of the franchise. Javier Bardem, Penelope's husband, plays the film's lead villain. Lena Headey. As Cersei Lannister, Lena Headey plays the ultimate villain on HBO's Game of Thrones, so viewers watched with a bit of sadistic glee when the character was literally and figuratively dressed down and then paraded through the streets of King's Landing in nothing but smears of filth. The scene is intense and humiliating, and drawn out so the audience can experience her awkward humiliation. The craziest part, however, is that we're not even watching Headey in the scene. The entire walk is performed by a body double, seamlessly merged with Headey's facial expressions and body language to make one awkward, horrible walk to the Red Keep. Brandon Lee. The son of legendary martial artist Bruce Lee, the charming and talented Brandon Lee was set to take Hollywood by storm. Sadly, while filming his breakout role in The Crow, Lee was shot by a prop gun that had a dummy round left in the chamber. He died later at the hospital. To complete the film, Lee's friend and stunt double Chad Stahelski stood in for him while special effects were used to give him Lee's face. Meanwhile, another stunt double helped finish out some of the action scenes. The result is a movie in which Lee's role is perfect and there's no indication of the tragedy that befell him. Jennifer Aniston. Friends was a massive success, and Jennifer Aniston is arguably the biggest star it produced, which makes it all the more unusual that it took years after the show was off the air for someone to finally notice an episode where Aniston inexplicably disappears. A fan watching a Friends marathon happened to notice a strange scene in The One with the Mugging from the 9th season.
Aniston is standing next to Matt LeBlanc, except it's not Aniston at all.
It seems that Aniston's stand-in was on the set that day, and for whatever reason, her scene wasn't edited to remove her from the shot. The presence of a stand-in isn't such a crazy thing. After all, stand-ins are on set to replace actors when they're not available. It's just that they usually don't end up in the final cut. Shemp Howard. The Three Stooges were under contract to produce 8 films in 1956. Unfortunately, 4 films into their contract, Shemp Howard died of a heart attack at age 60. And in the 1950s, no one gave a damn if you died or not. Your contract needed to be fulfilled. And thus was born the fake Shemp. Producer Jules White set about producing 4 brand new films, each starring Shemp, by cutting together old footage with new scenes featuring Joel Palma, an actor who had long filled supporting roles in the Stooges films. They just filmed him from behind or with his face obscured.
Hey, Shemp! We're in here! We got a lot of work to do, so shake a leg!
Hold your horses, will you?
The deception was so obvious that its legacy still lives on today. The cast of Evil Dead. The term fake Shemp was actually coined by director Sam Raimi because he needed to use quite a few of them during production of Evil Dead. As star Bruce Campbell recounted in his memoir If Chins Could Kill, because the film was so ultra-low budget, Raimi and the actors couldn't always work on the same schedule. Raimi needed to film what he could, when he could, and with whom he could. This meant no fewer than 18 stand-ins were used during production. That's pretty incredible, as the end result shows no sign that so many extra people were involved, even though the film is still notoriously ridiculous.
Shut up!
Harrison Ford. On the set of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, Harrison Ford suffered a pretty severe back injury that sidelined him for several weeks of filming. Steven Spielberg, however, was prepared for any eventuality. Ford was swapped with his longtime stunt double, Vic Armstrong. Armstrong acted so much like Ford that he managed to confuse Spielberg on set more than once. A number of action scenes were filmed without Ford, including the epic fight between Indy and the massive warrior on the mine conveyor belt.
Choosing the perfect actor for a movie role is already a delicate process, but it becomes even more difficult when an actor leaves a production, which can happen for any number of reasons. Directors and casting professionals can be left scrambling to replace their departing stars. Here are some of the craziest last-minute replacements we've seen on the big screen, some of which ended up being the replacement actor's most successful role. Mike Myers in Shrek. It's hard to imagine anything but Mike Myers' voice coming from the lovable animated ogre. But the story of Shrek's casting is actually quite tragic. Originally, comedian and character actor Chris Farley had been cast in the role, and according to his brother Kevin, Farley actually completed recording nearly all of his dialogue for the original Shrek film.
People see me and they go, "Ah! Help! A big, stupid, stinky, smelly, ugly ogre!"
Unfortunately, Farley had been struggling for some time with alcohol and substance abuse. And in December 1997, he passed away in his Chicago apartment after an accidental drug overdose. DreamWorks rushed to find a replacement and chose Myers. Additionally, they recast the role of Fiona with Cameron Diaz, who replaced Farley's SNL castmate, Janine Garofalo. Christian Bale in American Psycho. In an odd turn of events, Christian Bale ended up replacing himself for the role of Patrick Bateman in the 2000 black comedy horror film American Psycho. Well, sort of. Director Mary Herron had chosen Bale for the role, but the British actor wasn't yet the superstar he is today. Executives at Lionsgate wanted a higher-profile actor and reportedly made a $20 million offer to Leonardo DiCaprio without informing Herron. Herron fought hard to keep Bale, but Lionsgate eventually removed her from the project too, replacing her with Oliver Stone. Stone began revising the script, and the film fell into a period of developmental hell. Eventually, DiCaprio left to film The Beach, and Stone walked out as well. When Lionsgate finally came back to Herron, she agreed to return as director, with Bale as Bateman. Their perseverance definitely paid off. As the film became a polarizing box office success, an eventual cult classic, helping propel Bale to the top of Hollywood's A-list.
Wow. Isn't this a coincidence?
Hugh Jackman in X-Men. Although he ended up landing the role of Wolverine in X-Men, Hugh Jackman wasn't director Bryan Singer's first choice. Originally, Singer wanted Russell Crowe, who turned it down. Crowe recommended his friend Jackman for the part, but Singer decided to go with the more experienced actor Dougray Scott. Unfortunately for Scott, production on Mission Impossible 2 was delayed, leaving him unavailable when filming for X-Men began. Forced to make a last-minute change in the main cast, Singer called in Jackman for an audition, gave him the role, and the rest is history. Geena Davis in A League of Their Own. With her performance as Dottie Hinson in the 1992 sports dramedy A League of Their Own, Geena Davis won the hearts of moviegoers everywhere.
Hey, who's the manager? I am!
Act like it, you big lush.
However, director Penny Marshall's original choice was actress Deborah Winger, who was furious when she learned that Marshall had cast pop superstar Madonna in the film. Marshall later recalled in her memoir that before walking off the set, Winger told her, "You're making an Elvis film." Subsequently, Davis nailed her audition in Marshall's backyard and proved that she could throw a ball. While the rest of the cast had been training together for months prior to filming, Davis had to work hard and fast to get into shape for the demanding role. Michael Biehn in Aliens. It's probably hard to picture anyone but Michael Biehn as Dwayne Hicks in the 1986 movie Aliens, but originally, it was supposed to be James Remar. However, a couple of weeks after filming started, Remar abruptly left the production. He later revealed during a Sidebar podcast interview that while he had originally cited urgent matters at home to explain his departure, the truth is that he was struggling with drug addiction at the time, and director James Cameron fired Remar after he was arrested for possession. With no time to prepare for the physically demanding role, Michael Biehn was brought in as Remar's replacement. Ed Harris in The Truman Show. The critically acclaimed satirical film The Truman Show wouldn't be the same without the character Christof, the obsessive showrunner played masterfully by Ed Harris. But director Peter Weir didn't choose Harris at first. Originally, Dennis Hopper was cast in the role. After filming began, Weir and Hopper reportedly ran into creative differences on the set, leading Hopper to leave the production entirely. Hopper later revealed that he was fired after only 2 days of filming, a decision he called a major blow at the time. Called up at the last minute to replace Hopper, Harris threw himself into the role, earning himself an Oscar nomination and a Golden Globe win for Best Supporting Actor. Clint Eastwood in Dirty Harry. In addition to his performance as the man with no name, Clint Eastwood is also frequently remembered for his portrayal of the hard-as-nails homicide cop Harry Callahan in Dirty Harry. But the role almost went to another famous performer, Frank Sinatra. Supposedly, the script written for Sinatra had Harry toting a 12-gauge shotgun as his signature weapon, but as production got underway, Sinatra had to back out. A broken hand he sustained while filming a fight scene for the Manchurian Candidate left him unable to hold a gun. After ensuring the original script would be used, Eastwood agreed to play Harry, cementing his place in pop culture history with a .44 Magnum and the frequently misquoted line,
You've got to ask yourself one question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
Having the right actor or actress is an integral aspect of any successful TV show. Sometimes these stars are so important that the show can't go on without them. Here are some major TV shows that just couldn't recover from the loss and replacement of a leading actor. Sleepy Hollow, Fox's supernatural police drama, was always a little bit different than other cop shows. For starters, one of its main characters was Ichabod Crane from Washington Irving's short story The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, who comes back to life in the present day after having died 200 years or so prior. Crane then helps fight supernatural menaces alongside Police Lieutenant Abby Mills. Over 3 seasons, Sleepy Hollow settled into its role as a quirky police procedural, and then it did the unthinkable. Abby died, and actress Nicole Beharie left the series. Despite a steep loss of viewers from Season 1 to Season 3, Sleepy Hollow returned for a 4th season without Abby. Ichabod was now partnered with a Homeland Security agent named Diana Thomas. The cast reboot didn't do Sleepy Hollow any favors though. The show fell even further in the ratings and was soon cancelled. After 7 seasons of the hit Fox sitcom, actor Topher Grace decided to leave that 70s show in order to more fiercely pursue his blossoming film career. Eric wasn't the only member of the gang who left. Kelso, played by the show's other biggest star, Ashton Kutcher, also left the show, although Kutcher stuck around for a few episodes in Season 8 to explain his character's departure. To replace 2 very big holes in its cast, producers hired just one actor, Mad TV veteran Josh Myers. His character, Randy, gets a job at Hyde's record store and has a brief relationship with Donna, Eric's old girlfriend. Neither Randy nor Myers had much time to mesh with the ensemble. The decimated cast may have contributed to the show's diminished popularity and inevitable ending. The 8th season of that 70s show would be its last, although Grace and Kutcher would both come back to say goodbye for the finale.
It's like we never run out of things to talk about down here.
I knew you burnouts would be down here.
You guys, it's almost midnight. Mrs. Foreman is pouring the champagne.
Step by Step was an ABC sitcom about Carol and Frank Lambert, two single parents who bring their families together. In addition to all their kids, Frank's nephew Cody lived in a van outside the house. Cody was a good-natured, airheaded California dude, basically a sitcom version of Ted from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
And I'm Ted Theodore Logan. Yeah!
Affable and enthusiastic acting by Sasha Mitchell made the character a fan favorite, but in 1995, when Mitchell was arrested for spousal assault, he was convicted later that year and sentenced to 3 years of probation and spousal abuse counseling. Mitchell wound up behind bars for violating his parole and reportedly attacked his wife again. At the beginning of the 6th season of Step by Step, Cody was gone, replaced by Jean-Luc, a heavily accented hairdresser colleague of Carol's. Playing Jean-Luc was Bronson Pinchot, best known for playing the excitable, heavily accented Bulky on Perfect Strangers and the excitable, heavily accented Serge in Beverly Hills Cop. The new cast addition didn't work, and ABC cancelled Step by Step at the end of the season. The show then moved to CBS for a final year, without Pinchot. After the first season of The Facts of Life, the number of main characters was cut from 10 to just 5. Eastland boarding school house mother Mrs. Garrett and 4 female students. After those 4 graduated in the 4th season, Mrs. Garrett opened a gourmet shop and hired her former students. And after season 7, Mrs. Garrett herself, Charlotte Ray, left the show. She thought it was time to move on, later telling Entertainment Weekly that the show could continue on without her. But producers loved the show's dynamic of a wise older woman doling out advice to young women. So they created the role of Mrs. Garrett's sister, Beverly Ann. However, the replacement didn't quite work, and by the 9th season, The Facts of Life was unceremoniously cancelled. American Idol has created a number of stars, such as Kelly Clarkson, Jennifer Hudson, Adam Lambert, and of course Simon Cowell. Audiences couldn't get enough of the judge, who was often brutally and hilariously honest with contestants.
Okay. Best singer in America.
Oh, yeah.
Right. I can honestly say you are the worst singer in America.
Cowell was the biggest star of the series, which was the most watched show on TV for an unprecedented 8 straight seasons. But in 2010, after 9 seasons, he moved on, in part to develop the American version of his British talent series, The X Factor. Idol producers had a hard time replacing Cowell, as well as fellow original judge Paula Abdul. The Idol judges table saw a lot of stars take a stab at it, but actual singers just couldn't fill the void left by the music industry guy who criticized as singers. By the time Fox pulled the plug on American Idol in 2016, it had slipped out of the top 20 most viewed shows.
Maybe we've made a mistake.
I think we may have made
We've made a big mistake.
News Radio, NBC's critically acclaimed but low-watched comedy, had no plans to replace one of its characters and best-known star, but tragedy forced the producer's hand. Between the show's 4th and 5th season, star Phil Hartman was shot to death by his troubled wife. It was a horrific crime, and a devastating loss for the show. But in order to complete enough episodes to sell the show into syndication, News Radio was picked up for another season anyway. In the season premiere, it was explained that Hartman's character, pompous radio newsreader Bill McNeil, died of a sudden heart attack. Replacing him at the newsreader's desk was a new character, Max Lewis. Weird, insecure, and wholly unqualified for the position, Max was portrayed by Hartman's friend and Saturday Night Live co-star John Lovitz. While Lovitz is a great comic actor, he just couldn't overcome the sadness looming over News Radio. Lovitz's first season would be the show's last. For the Fox television adaptation of Lethal Weapon, Clayne Crawford took over for Mel Gibson as loose cannon Martin Riggs. And if on-set reports published by Variety are any indication, Crawford was even harder to control than his character. In an episode he directed, a special effects explosion went awry, sending a piece of debris at co-star Damon Wayans. When Wayans complained, Crawford referred to his co-star as a crybaby. Another time, he reportedly screamed and swore at a group of children who wandered near. On yet another occasion, he reportedly proved so hard to work with that a director walked off the set in the middle of a shoot. In May 2018, after 2 seasons, producers eliminated what they thought was the root cause of the show's problems and fired Crawford. They rushed to find somebody to replace him and quickly hired Sean William Scott to play Wesley Cole, a new partner for Detective Roger Murtaugh. Scott couldn't save the show, however. All that tension didn't totally dissipate, with Wayans announcing that he planned to leave the series in the middle of the season. Fox decided to wash their hands of the whole thing in May 2019 and cancelled Lethal Weapon. From 1998 to 2007, Kevin James and Leah Remini starred on the popular CBS sitcom King of Queens. James would go on to star in a string of movies like Grown Ups and Paul Blart Mall Cop, but in 2016 he returned to the weekly CBS sitcom grind with Kevin Can Wait. James portrayed Kevin Gable, a family man who has to delay retiring from his police job due to family and money issues. Playing opposite James was Erin Hayes as Kevin's wife Donna Gable. At least that's how it was for the first season. Kevin Can Wait producers revamped the show for season 2. They killed off Donna Gable and fired Hayes. James explained the decision to the New York Daily News by saying, "We were literally just running out of ideas." They also brought in a new face, who was really a familiar face. Surprisingly, Leah Remini joined Kevin Can Wait as Kevin's business partner, Vanessa. However, the nostalgic rebooting couldn't overcome the weird behind-the-scenes shakeup, and ratings actually dropped in season 2. After the conclusion of the sitcom's second ill-fated season, CBS didn't wait to cancel Kevin. An ensemble drama with a culturally diverse cast set in an often surreal rural Alaska, Northern Exposure was radically different from most other shows on television. Rob Morrow starred as Dr. Joel Fleischman, a snobby New York City doctor who heads north to service the tiny town of Sicily. Northern Exposure was a big hit, reaching the top 20 in the ratings and earning 4 straight Emmy nominations for Outstanding Drama Series and winning the prize in 1992. But Fleischman's desire to leave Alaska never faded, and Morrow wanted to bounce too. Halfway through the show's 6th season, Morrow fled Northern Exposure, reportedly to pursue new acting challenges and a movie career. Replacing him was a new physician, Dr. Philip Capra, portrayed by Paul Provenza, a respected stand-up comedian who had little acting experience apart from his work on sitcoms. That inexperience seems to have showed. After just half a season with Provenza at the helm, the network cancelled Northern Exposure. The high school sitcom Head of the Class debuted on ABC in 1986. It explored the relationships between a diverse group of highly advanced Manhattan students and their history teacher Charlie Moore, played by Howard Hessman. A big part of why Head of the Class worked is that it was ensemble-focused. The various kids had personal and academic problems, and Mr. Moore helped them sort things out. Hessman portrayed Moore with understatement and subtlety, letting his younger co-stars take center stage. However, the actor hated Head of the Class. In 1989, he told a reporter that he thought the show didn't have much worth. He said, "We're not doing the show that I was led to believe I'd do, and it's difficult for me to get off that." Unsurprisingly, Hessman left the show in 1990. In his place was Scottish comedian Billy Connolly as a teacher named Billy McGregor. All of a sudden, a show about high school kids' problems was a show about wacky Mr. McGregor. ABC seemed to realize that too. In 1991, the network cancelled Head of the Class and quickly ordered up a new show called Billy. Connolly continued to play McGregor, who was now living as a boarder in a California single mother's house. Community never had a huge audience during its 5-year run on NBC. Nevertheless, NBC kept renewing the critically acclaimed comedy about the disparate people who comprised a Colorado community college study group. That loyalty remained even after increasing difficulties with Community creator and showrunner Dan Harmon, who was fired and then rehired. However, 5 seasons was ultimately NBC's limit, leaving internet giant Yahoo to step in and renew Community for a 6th season.
Show's gonna last 3 weeks!
6 seasons and a movie! Original regulars Joel McHale, Gillian Jacobs, Danny Pudi, Ken Jeong, and Alison Brie followed the series to Yahoo, but the show had been losing cast members and kept losing them as it transitioned to streaming. Chevy Chase, Donald Glover, and Yvette Nicole Brown were not part of the regular cast of Community's 6th season. New actors were added, but the Band-Aid casting just didn't work, and there was no 7th season of Community. Not enough people tuned in, and the show didn't generate as much advertising revenue as Yahoo had hoped. In fact, the revenue was so small that it effectively led to the complete shutdown of Yahoo's screen. Yahoo CFO Ken Goldman said on an earnings call that the company lost $42 million because of Community and its 2 other original series. Scrubs, a dramedy about medical interns desperately trying to figure out what they were doing as they worked in a hospital, was a critically acclaimed Emmy-nominated hit over its first few seasons on NBC. The network finally dropped Scrubs after 7 seasons in 2008, but got picked up by ABC to finish things off with an 8th season. The show's writers and cast prepared a true series finale to cap off those episodes, only for ABC to unexpectedly renew the series for season 9. By that point, however, star Zach Braff was ready to move on to other things, so the show was retooled overhauled and rebooted, no longer taking place at a teaching hospital, but at a medical school. Familiar doctors were now teachers instead of active surgeons. Breath moved to the background, and the new narrator and center of the show became Dr. Lucy Bennett. Ultimately, the big changes were too much to take, and the 9th season of Scrubs was its last.
Casting is a key ingredient in the secret sauce of great filmmaking. In the best cases, a certain performer filling a certain character's shoes can turn a part into a franchise-leading phenomenon. But the real magic is in synergy, when several actors click. There's no X-Files without David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson. And what would the original Star Wars movies have been without Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, and Harrison Ford together? But sometimes an actor's gotta go. It's awful for the would-be star who watches the role end up becoming part of a massive hit while their replacement reaps the rewards, and it's just as bad for the actors who willfully walk away from the role of a lifetime, never to be heard from again. The Almost King of Gondor. The Lord of the Rings is a sprawling epic with no single lead character. The entire point of the film trilogy is that it takes the combined strength and skill of many to overcome the Dark Lord Sauron. That said, there's one character that stands out as the film's mightiest hero, a great warrior who also just so happens to be the heir to the most powerful kingdom in Middle-earth, Aragorn, son of Arathorn. It's the type of role that can turn an unknown into a worldwide superstar, and it did just that for Viggo Mortensen, which is all too bad for Stuart Townsend, who will always be remembered as the man who almost played Aragorn, if he's remembered at all. Townsend was director Peter Jackson's original choice to play the man who would be King of Gondor, but he was let go only a few days into filming. According to Jackson, Townsend was simply too young to be playing the veteran warrior. To this day, Mortensen is synonymous with the character. As for poor Townsend, he's gotten parts here and there, but otherwise he's just another casualty of the War of the Rings. The Dragon's Other Mother. It's become one of the biggest and most influential series on television, but Game of Thrones wasn't always a sure thing. To try to bring the books to screen, HBO ordered a pilot episode before the rest of the series was shot, and it was a disaster. Fortunately, HBO chose to stick with the project. Old scenes were cut, new scenes were written, the director was replaced, and several cast members were swapped out. Of the latter, none were more significant than the recasting of Daenerys Targaryen, one of the most important characters in the entire story. Tamsin Merchant played the role in the pilot. For undisclosed reasons, however, Emilia Clarke was brought on board to take her place. Game of Thrones has gone on to become HBO's most successful series, and Clarke has taken on starring roles in everything from romantic comedies to Star Wars, even as she continues to portray the Mother of Dragons. Merchant, meanwhile, has continued to work steadily, but is still waiting for her big breakout role.
I am Daenerys Stormborn of House Targaryen.
Messing with the timeline. Back to the Future was always a zany concept. A time-traveling DeLorean unites an 80s teen with his teenage parents in the 1950s, and shenanigans ensue. It went on to become a defining movie of the decade, and turned lead actor Michael J. Fox into a superstar. But Fox almost wasn't in the timeline at all, since he wasn't the original Marty McFly. In fact, Eric Stoltz had already shot weeks' worth of footage in the role before being let go by the director. Fox rocketed to household name status, while Stoltz settled into steady work on TV and in indie films. He did get a Golden Globe nomination in 1985 for Mask, but for all that talent, he never had the star power of a time-traveling DeLorean. True of us all.
I guess you guys aren't ready for that yet.
Mission Impossible for this mutant. X-Men launched the modern wave of superhero movies when it was released in 2000, and while there are quite a few of the titular heroes represented in that first movie, none was more popular and more enduring than Wolverine. The cigar-chomping Canadian has always been a comic book favorite, so it was absolutely essential that the character be cast with the right actor. That's why the filmmakers went with Dougray Scott. The Scottish actor was an unknown at the time, but since the whole X-Men film was being cast with relative newcomers, he seemed like a great choice to bring the gruff living weapon with the adamantium skeleton to life. The only problem was the film that got him attention in the first place, Mission Impossible 2. The film reportedly ran over schedule, forcing Scott to stay behind on that project. Hugh Jackman was cast instead, the start of what would be a long and successful career in and out of superhero movies. Scott, meanwhile, has never achieved the same level of fame. What a couple of claws might have done for him, we'll never know.
It's still part of my past. It never really, I never think about it, to be honest with you.
Blown away by Arnold. When James Cameron set out to write and direct the first Terminator film, he was a nobody. His biggest directorial effort up to that time was Piranha 2, a movie he was fired from which featured actor Lance Henriksen. Cameron liked Henriksen and envisioned him as the titular cyborg for Terminator, but then along came an Austrian bodybuilder named Arnold Schwarzenegger, who'd just come off playing the lead character in Conan the Barbarian. With his sheer physical presence, he was the obvious choice to play the Terminator. In every way, the Terminator was Schwarzenegger's movie, and it vaulted him into the upper echelon of the decade's action action stars. Henriksen, meanwhile, has stayed busy over the years, albeit in the types of character actor roles that don't spawn catchphrases or multi-million-dollar sequels.
I'll be back.
A Tarantino twist in casting. Quentin Tarantino is one of the most meticulous craftsmen in the business. He writes his own scripts, and he knows exactly how he wants to shoot them. Tarantino knows that a scene must be tuned with perfect precision, and that includes perfect casting. Michael Madsen turned in a memorable performance as Mr. Blonde in Tarantino's film Reservoir Dogs, so when he began filling out the roster for his follow-up feature Pulp Fiction, Tarantino wanted Madsen back. Madsen was forced to turn down the role in favor of a part in Kevin Costner's western Wyatt Earp. It probably made sense at the time. Costner was an established star, whereas Tarantino was still an indie filmmaker. In Madsen's place, John Travolta was cast as Vincent Vega. It was exactly what Travolta needed. He earned an Oscar nomination and a second win for his career. Wyatt Earp, meanwhile, went nowhere. Madsen has an impressive slew of credits to his name, but has never attracted the type of fame or acclaim Travolta enjoyed post-Pulp. Transforming lead actress. Megan Fox was still largely unknown when she was cast in the lead female role in Michael Bay's 2007 film Transformers. The film was a huge box office hit, and Fox became a worldwide star. Her return in the 2009 sequel Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen cemented her status as one of blockbuster cinema's hottest new stars. There was nowhere for her to go but up, until it all came crashing down. Fox was unceremoniously fired from the third film, Transformers: Dark of the Moon. Initially intended to return, she was thrown out for being too difficult to work with and for her criticism of Bay. While the new lead actress technically took on a brand new character, this was still the girlfriend of Shia LaBeouf's hero, effectively the same role. Fox's career has never been quite the same since. Her most high-profile outings have been in the rebooted Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles series and the ill-fated Jonah Hex. Otherwise, she hasn't seen many starring roles in films, blockbusters, or otherwise. Sometimes it isn't just being replaced that damages your career, it's the reasons why.
You know, I tell it like it is.
That's a negative, ghostwriter. Matthew Modine's movie career was just heating up in the early 1980s. He seemed like a great candidate to star in a new patriotic action film titled Top Gun, but Modine chose to walk away from the offer since he was uncomfortable with what he felt was an unabashedly pro-military film. Instead, the job went to Tom Cruise, who used his performance as Maverick to help launch one of the most successful movie careers in history. Cruise became one of the industry's biggest stars, and Top Gun was the turning point, the movie that changed his life forever. Modine hasn't had the same luck. He's carved out an impressive career in his own right, turning in acclaimed performances in a long list of projects that includes Full Metal Jacket and the hit Netflix series Stranger Things, but he's kept a much lower profile than he might have if he'd taken that fateful role. He refused Top Gun out of principle, but it didn't come without cost. What a very Maverick thing to do.
Casts can get disrupted for a variety of reasons. Sometimes schedules change, sometimes personal problems can lead an actor to drop out. In some cases, things still turn out well, or even better for the films in question. But in others, it damages the cast's chemistry and dooms the film. One of the most famous recastings of all time was that of Eric Stoltz in Back to the Future. Stoltz was the original Marty McFly, a time-traveling teenager who's accidentally sent back to the year 1955. He was replaced with Michael J. Fox a little over a month into shooting. Leah Thompson, who played Marty's mom Lorraine, told The Hollywood Reporter in 2015 that the switch was very difficult for her, as she was very good friends with Stoltz. Fellow castmate Christopher Lloyd, who starred as inventor Doc Brown, gave a radio interview in 2012 and described the moment the cast found out Stoltz was history. It was during an intense period of night shooting after he'd been working with Stoltz every night for 3 weeks. He noted that Stoltz was a very good actor, but producers needed someone with more of a comic flair in the role. Lloyd was terrified when he reshot his scenes with Fox, but he was happy that it all worked out in the end. Great Scott, did it ever! This young adult romance between high school student Bella Swan and vampire Edward Cullen captivated readers and moviegoers around the globe. In the first 2 Twilight films, the vampire Victoria was played by Rochelle Lefebvre. But in the third entry, Eclipse, Victoria didn't seem like her old self, as Lefebvre had been replaced by Bryce Dallas Howard. Summit Entertainment and Lefebvre had an awkwardly public battle over the move, with the actress saying she was stunned and the studio countering that they were disappointed by her attempt to make her career choices the fault of the studio. Whether the fault lay with Lefebvre's scheduling or Summit's ruthlessness, the switch was hard on her castmates. Jackson Rathbone, who played Cullen Coven member Jasper Hale, noted that Lefebvre was a dear friend whom he was going to miss terribly. And Peter Facinelli, who starred as Edward's adoptive father, declared that he loved her like a sister. Ang Lee picked up a Best Director Oscar for Life of Pi, his adaptation of Yann Martel's novel, in which a man retells the story of his weeks surviving in a shipwreck at the age of 16. Adrift on the Pacific Ocean with only a Bengal tiger in his lifeboat for company, his story is told to a writer who is played in the film by Rafe Spall, but originally that part was filled by Tobey Maguire. Lee ended up removing Maguire after shooting Wrapped because he felt his presence took away from the story. He insisted that he loved Tobey, whom he had worked with previously in 1997's The Ice Storm, but he worried that it would be distracting to have a big movie star sitting there for such a small part. Irfan Khan, who played the adult Pi, was jarred by the recasting, as it meant he had to reshoot those scenes. He was worried about having to make a big emotional investment all over again, but it ended up working out, as he learned from his director to use the opportunity constructively. There was a lot of pressure to deliver satisfying sequels to The Matrix, the groundbreaking 1999 sci-fi cyberpunk classic. That pressure only increased when numerous production issues led observers to wonder if the series was cursed. This included numerous deaths of cast members, including Gloria Foster, who played the Oracle and who passed away just after the filming of The Matrix Reloaded. And there was also the tragic case of Aaliyah, who was initially cast as Z in Reloaded. The singer and actress was killed in a plane crash at the age of 22 in the midst of production. Co-star Harold Perrineau remembered her fondly.
It was a really hard loss. Personally, it was a really hard loss for the community of music and entertainment, and we'll miss her.
The re-audition process for Z took many months. Eventually, Nona Gay, daughter of singer Marvin Gaye, was cast as her replacement. The drama on the set of 1996's The Island of Dr. Moreau is legendary. It may have started when Bruce Willis had to drop out of the lead role, and director Richard Stanley was reportedly told the only way to save the film was to hire Val Kilmer, who ultimately realized his leverage and allegedly started making demands. Stanley was eventually replaced by John Frankenheimer, but that didn't stop Kilmer from causing disruptions. According to crew members, he would arrive late, change dialogue, and bully the cast and crew. One witness reported that he even intentionally burned a cameraman right on his face with a cigarette. Kilmer's behavior also led him to a feud with co-star Marlon Brando. Kilmer repeatedly refused to emerge from his trailer until Brando was on set, and Brando would only come onto the set after a private discussion with Frankenheimer. According to the director, this led to days going by without any footage being shot, as extras sat around in their makeup in full costumes in the heat. When Charlie Hunnam and Dakota Johnson were announced as the stars of 50 Shades of Grey, it looked like they had the chemistry necessary for the bondage-laced tale. Yet that chemistry wasn't enough to keep Hunnam on board. 4 weeks before shooting was set to commence, he dropped out, citing scheduling conflicts. Johnson later explained during an interview with David Letterman that it was a confusing moment for her. Hunnam's replacement, Jamie Dornan, seemed to mollify some fan objection, but by all accounts lacked the chemistry Johnson had with Hunnam. For one thing, their press tour was low energy.
They're that instant chemistry. No, you hate each other. He's hard to work with.
And while the film was a hit, the pair didn't generate enough sparks to win over most critics.
More than a decade before Universal's attempted Dark Universe and its Tom Cruise-led Mummy reboot, their original efforts at bringing the classic monster back to the big screen were certified hits. The Mummy trilogy, which kicked off in 1999 and concluded with 2008's critically panned The Mummy: Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, killed it at the box office, raking in a collective $1.25 billion worldwide. A major reason for the success of the first two Mummy films was the solid cast, which helped revitalize the action-adventure genre by infusing it with both horror and comedy. They took what could have been a set of campy period films and made them appeal to a younger audience through witty dialogue and thrilling action. Most generally tout Brendan Fraser as Rick O'Connell as the centerpiece of the Mummy universe. But rising star Rachel Weisz's work as Evelyn Evie O'Connell proved just as integral. Weisz's performance in The Mummy turned out to be her big break. She signed on to do The Mummy Returns without question, but she's mysteriously absent from Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, in which Maria Bello played Evie instead. The reason for Weisz's departure from the project was actually laid to rest nearly 12 years ago, but hasn't necessarily become common knowledge. When talks of a third film in the Mummy continuity began to pick up steam back in 2007, so did discussions about why Rachel Weisz wasn't attached to the project. One common rumor ran rampant about her distaste for the script, which she reportedly felt went against Evie's character. Another was started by director Rob Cohen, who believed it had something to do with Rick and Evie's 27-year-old son, Alex, whose inclusion would require Weisz to be aged up for the third movie. Weisz put the whole debacle to bed during an interview back in 2008, when she explained that she never got the chance to even look at the script. She'd also just finished on Rian Johnson's The Brothers Bloom, and was about to begin work on another film immediately, so she wouldn't have a moment to spare. Couple that with her and Darren Aronofsky's newborn son waiting for her at home, there was no time for a trip to China for 5 months. Tomb of the Dragon Emperor was a critical flop and prompted Universal to rethink their plans for a follow-up based around the Aztecs. Little did Weisz know back then that she couldn't have pulled out of the series at a better time.
Hey, Mom. Sorry I blamed you guys for raising the Emperor.
To say The Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor suffered without Weisz would be an understatement. The film is the lowest rated of the trilogy, with an abysmal 12% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes. Moviegoers didn't find it charming either, as its audience score was only slightly better at 30%. In the audience comments on the aggregator site, many franchise fans noted that the film took a hit with Weisz's absence. One viewer wrote, "Ultimately, the absence of Rachel Weisz and the change in location and mythology are the biggest flaws in this film. Weisz was a major part of the first 2 films, and by having her replaced by Maria Bello, the original character is lost and replaced with one that doesn't meet Weisz's performance. Swapping out actors at the end of a trilogy is a huge risk. We wonder if it might have been better to leave out Evie entirely to not frustrate and confuse the franchise's fans. While Weisz wasn't in the film, there was a nice homage to her."
Is the Scarlett O'Keeffe character really based on you?
Honestly, I can say she's a completely different person.
Bello praised the moment in an interview with Collider, saying, "It was a great comment on it. I liked the idea that I wrote novels, and the woman I wrote was this amazing, beautiful Rachel Weisz ingenue, and she was the character because she's so perfect. And then there's me in my mansion, bored to death." Following the release of Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, Bello was on board for another Mummy film, but Universal canceled the project in 2012. The Tom Cruise Mummy reboot in 2017 flopped hard, killing the planned Dark Universe. So who knows what's in store for the franchise? It just might come back to life.
Not every Harry Potter star made it through all 8 movies. A few of them were switched out for a wide range of reasons, including death, run-ins with the law, and embarrassing scandals. Here are some of the major Harry Potter characters who were ultimately recast between films, and the stories of how those transfigurations came to be. Although there's still plenty of Potter fans who prefer Richard Harris's depiction of Dumbledore, the role was nonetheless recast ahead of Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban after the 2-time Oscar winner passed away in 2002 from Hodgkin's disease. Harris had expected that he might not be able to carry on in the role forever, which he first took to please his granddaughter. He told the press that, "I'll keep doing it as long as I enjoy it, my health holds out, and they still want me, but the chances of all 3 of those factors remaining constant are pretty slim." The part would eventually go to Michael Gambon, who starred in all 6 following films. But Gambon wasn't the only British star invited to don the heaping wig and decadent cloaks. Years after the fact, Sir Ian McKellen revealed that he too had a shot at becoming Albus Dumbledore, but turned it down.
I couldn't. I couldn't take over the part from an actor who I'd known didn't approve of me.
Harris had reportedly been unimpressed with McKellen's career, implying that he was a passionless actor. Despite all this, McKellen added that he sometimes saw himself on posters which featured Gambon as Dumbledore. When Lord Voldemort first appeared on screen in Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, there wasn't a lot for the actor portraying him to do. After all, he was mostly hidden behind Professor Quirrell's turban throughout the story. And even when he did emerge, his face was superimposed on the back of Quirrell's skull. Richard Brimmer did what he could with the role, but wasn't surprised when he wasn't invited back to reprise his part in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Brimmer told This Is Northeast, "The producers spent a long time fighting to get me, so I'm very proud to have been the first. But the role is now being played by Ralph Fiennes, who's an old mate, in the 4th film. I've been in the business a long time, and it didn't surprise me that they went for a bigger name, being Hollywood-led, and I'm happy to pass it on to Rafe." Fiennes was already an A-lister by the time Sorcerer's Stone was released, having won Oscar nominations for Schindler's List and The English Patient, so it's no surprise that the filmmakers didn't seek him out for that brief CGI appearance. Jamie Waylett did an apt enough job as Draco Malfoy's pastry-loving henchman Vincent Crabbe. Like many of his contemporaries in the series, the young actor was completely new to the world of film when he suited up as the Slytherin sycophant, but was gradually given more and more screen time throughout his 6-film tenure. By the time Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows arrived, however, Crabbe's other half, Gregory Goyle, was seen standing next to a new Malfoy lieutenant, Blaise Zabini. Crabbe was completely out of the picture, and while the role itself wasn't recast, the character was shuffled out of sight to make room for Zabini. This all stemmed from Waylett's off-camera run-ins with the law. Waylett was arrested in 2009 after he was caught growing marijuana plants in his mother's home. That incident alone was enough to lose him his prime position in the Potter world, and the troubles would only continue from there. The actor was later arrested again in 2012 for participating in a riot, and this time he faced jail. Waylett's co-star Jesse Cave would later publicly rise to his defense, but the damage was still done, and the actor hasn't worked on a film since. When the Gryffindor common room portrait known as the Fat Lady first appeared in Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, it was celebrated actress Elizabeth Spriggs who portrayed her. However, Spriggs' portrayal was brief and rather rigid in blithely asking for the prefect's password. So before the character would return in Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, the actress was replaced with Dawn French. French brought a more comedic element to the character as she desperately tries to impress the Hogwarts student body with her glass-breaking operatic skills. French earned the role after her Harry Potter spoof for charity caught the attention of director and producer Christopher Columbus. Columbus told the BBC, "I think she's incredibly funny, and her Harry Potter spoof for comic relief was pretty amazing." The casting of the Harry Potter films was entirely limited to British thespians, a rule so strict it even forced producers to turn down Robin Williams for the role of Hagrid. But Vern Troyer became the rare exception when he was cast as Gringotts banker Griphook in Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Troyer was the only American actor with a major role in the film, but the character was voiced by his English co-star Warwick Davis, who also portrayed Professor Flitwick and another bank teller in the film. But by the time Griphook became more significant to the story in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, Davis had taken over the role completely.
Griphook has so much more depth to him that I've not ever been able to get into my work as Professor Flitwick, and so I went in and read for David Yates.
Though it was never reported as the reason for Troyer's replacement, the actor had been caught up in a number of embarrassing scandals following the first film's release.
Sometimes the actors who play the bad guys we love to hate have to pass the role to someone else. Maybe it's because of behind-the-scenes drama, or perhaps it's because of busy schedules. Here are the real reasons these supervillain actors were replaced. Frank Gorshin played the quizzing villain, the Riddler, in the 60s Batman series.
Riddle me this, crime fighter! What room can no one enter?
Gorshin's masked trickster remained one of the most well-loved villains of the series, and even Mark Hamill named him as one of his influences for his work on the Joker.
His Riddler is like one of my favorite comic book villains of all time. I love Frank Gorshin.
Yet, in Batman's second season, Gorshin inexplicably disappeared for 2 episodes and was replaced by John Astin, who's best known as Gomez Addams from The Addams Family. They were Astin's only appearances as the brain-teasing bad guy, and Gorshin eventually returned to the role. There are different stories about why the brief hiccup in casting happened. Gorshin's version was that he had a nightclub appearance commitment he couldn't get out of that conflicted with the shooting schedule. But Batman producer William Dozier claimed that Gorshin's talent agency demanded more money for the actor's appearances on the show than its budget could bear. 2 of Marvel's most vicious rivals are Wolverine and Victor Creed, aka Sabretooth. Fans got a tiny piece of that rivalry on the big screen in 2000's X-Men, when retired professional wrestler Tyler Mane played Sabretooth as part of Magneto's Brotherhood. He doesn't say much, but he gets a couple of good throwdowns with Hugh Jackman's Logan. But when it was time to give Logan his first solo flick with 2009's X-Men Origins, Wolverine, Mane was nowhere to be seen. Instead, it was Liev Schreiber playing the Savage Mutant. Speaking to The Hollywood Reporter in 2017, Maine said he didn't get to play Sabretooth in the prequel because the filmmakers wanted someone who looked more like Jackman. The wrestler explained, "The storyline was them rising as brothers, and Liev and Hugh look a lot closer in that respect, so I understand. I can't say I wasn't disappointed. I'd love to get my claws back into that role. But that's Hollywood." Hugo Weaving played the villainous Red Skull in 2011's Captain America, the first Avenger, but when the character surprised audiences 7 years later by showing up in Avengers Infinity War, there was another actor under all the prosthetics.
In order to take the stone, you must lose that which you love.
While the accent and the voice may have sounded right, it was actually a skilled impression by Walking Dead actor Ross Marquand, not Weaving. Weaving's decision to sit this one out was hardly surprising, since the actor told Collider in 2012 that he had no intention of reprising the Marvel role. While acknowledging that he'd signed a multi-picture contract with Marvel, he said he didn't think Marvel would try to force the matter if he said no. But it turns out that Weaving may have been willing to return if Marvel had honored the terms of his contract. He told Time Out in 2020 that Marvel had tried to negotiate a lower rate for Infinity War and its sequel, Avengers Endgame, than was promised in his original contract. As a result, Weaving bowed out, opening the door for Marquand. The first actress to play Batman's feline antagonist, Catwoman, in the 60s TV series was Julie Newmar, who actually returned to the role in two recent animated features, 2016's Batman, Return of the Caped Crusaders, and the following year's Batman vs. Two-Face. Unfortunately, when it came time to film the 1966 Batman movie with the cast of the TV show, Newmar was shooting the soon-to-be-abandoned comedy Monsieur Lecoq. She was replaced for the film by Lee Merriweather, although Newmar continued playing the character on the show. For Batman's third and final season, Newmar left the series to make the western McKenna's Gold, and actress and singer Eartha Kitt took up the role of Gotham's top cat burglar. Because Kitt was African American, it was deemed too controversial at the time for her and Batman to keep teasing each other, so their romantic connection unfortunately disappeared. While he never got any acid thrown on him, fans were guessing that a turn as Two-Face might eventually be in the cards for Billy D. Williams when he played Harvey Dent in 1989's Batman. In that film, Dent had just become Gotham City's new district attorney and hadn't yet suffered the catastrophic injury that would prompt his shift from Batman ally to supervillain.
For your dying pleasure, we are serving the very same acid that made us the men we are today!
However, at the 2017 Wizard World Nashville Comic-Con, Williams told fans that his chance to play Two-Face ended when director Joel Schumacher took the reins from Tim Burton on Batman Forever. Williams explained, "I had hoped that I would have done Two-Face, but it changed hands before then, and I think Schumacher got involved, so they took a different direction with that." However, Williams did eventually get to play Two-Face in a different format. In 2017, he voiced the iconic villain in the Lego Batman movie. The mid-credits scene of 2012's The Avengers briefly introduced movie audiences to Thanos, but it wasn't until Avengers Infinity War that the villain finally became the focus of the main story. The Thanos we met in the Avengers mid-credits scene isn't the same guy who plays the Mad Titan in the rest of the Infinity Saga. True Blood actor Damien Portier played Thanos at the end of the Avengers, but there was no drama behind the decision to replace him in the MCU. Avengers director Joss Whedon admitted he really wasn't sure exactly what to do with Thanos after the Avengers, implying there was no real long-term plan when Portier was cast. By the time the characters came around again in 2014's Guardians of the Galaxy, Marvel had a clearer idea of Thanos' trajectory in the MCU, and Josh Brolin was cast in the role. As Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige put it, Brolin could be Thanos without any effects. He has that kind of face and that kind of gravitas.
I am inevitable.
In 2009, the video game Batman: Arkham Asylum was released and quickly earned the reputation as one of the best superhero video games ever. One of the game's highlights was the return of voice actors from the popular Batman the Animated Series television show, most notably Kevin Conroy as Batman and Mark Hamill as the Joker.
Look at all this new security. How's a guy supposed to break out of here?
Conroy and Hamill would lend their voices to follow-ups like Arkham City, Arkham Knight, and Arkham VR, but both were missing from the 2013 prequel game Batman: Arkham Origins. Instead of Hamill, the Clown Prince of Crime was voiced by Troy Baker. An official reason has never been offered for Hamill's absence from Arkham Origins, but we know a couple of likely contributing factors. First, while he would eventually do Joker's voice again for other games, as well as the 2016 animated adaptation Batman: The Killing Joke, Hamill told IGN in 2012 he had no intention of ever voicing the Joker again. Second, unlike the first two Arkham games, which were developed by Rocksteady, Arkham Origins was developed by WB Montreal, which reportedly couldn't spare as big of a budget.
Sometimes a TV show can make big cast shifts and not suffer too many consequences, but others aren't so lucky. These major TV shows just couldn't recover from the loss and replacement of a major character, or the actor who played them. Dallas had its fair share of character replacements during its run from 1978 to 1991, as any show that airs for 14 seasons inevitably does. But one that still stands out with fans to this day is the role of Miss Ellie Ewing. Barbara Bel Geddes originated the part and played it right up until 1984. When she left in order to have a quadruple bypass heart surgery. At the time, she was replaced by Donna Reed, and fans were not into it. In fact, fans were so not into it that 6 months later, when Bel Geddes had recovered, she was asked back onto the show. Reed didn't go down without a fight though. She tried to sue and halt production. In the end, the judge didn't agree with her and the series carried on. Bel Geddes continued playing Miss Ewing for the remainder of the series, bringing life to the character for over 300 episodes. When Suits hit airwaves in 2011, critics had positive but somewhat mixed reviews on the premise, which turned the tired legal drama format on its head with the introduction of Mike Ross, a wannabe lawyer without a degree, and Harvey Specter, the hotshot attorney who mentored him. Shot in Toronto, the series wound up being a massive hit for the network and was considered the last of its Blue Skies era.
Hey, you ready for this? Yeah, I am.
However, that all ended in 2017, when Patrick J. Adams and Meghan Markle, who played Mike Ross and his love interest, Rachel Zane, respectively, announced they were leaving the show after 7 seasons. At that point, another original series star, Gina Torres, also exited, leaving the cast down 3 members. As a result, the show brought on Dule Hill and Katherine Heigl, while upping Amanda Schull from recurring to full-time status in Season 8. However, the new mix of characters didn't resonate as well as the old-school ones, and the show wrapped for good in Season 9. It seems like networks have been trying to recreate the soapy primetime success of Desperate Housewives ever since that show went off the air in 2012. ABC thought it came close with the 2013 entry, Mistresses, which failed to earn critical praise but still snagged a second season renewal following its steamy first season summer run. Fans continued to bake in the hotness of it all the following summer, but when the show was renewed for a third season, ABC revealed it was moving production from Los Angeles to Vancouver. That was bad news for star Alyssa Milano, who couldn't be that far from her family. Milano stepped away as a result, and the show recruited Jennifer Esposito to fill that void with her Callista Raines character. That lasted 1 season, and then Esposito also left the series in order to pursue other projects. Surprisingly, the show was renewed for 1 more season, but without Milano, fans just didn't seem that into it, and the series was axed for good after a very dramatic Season 4 finale. It's no secret that Julie Benz did not want to exit Dexter. After she was killed off in the show's 4th season, she admitted to reporters that she, quote, bawled and said it was the worst thing to ever happen to her in her career. It seems as though fans felt the same way. While the decision was purely a creative one, the salt in the wound for passionate viewers came in season 5, when Julia Stiles was cast as Lumen Pierce, a new love interest for Dexter. The character lasted the entire season and finally exited ahead of season 6. For many, it was a turning point, especially as they watched the show go on to cast other guest stars, like Colin Hanks and Yvonne Strahovski, to fill the void. Then, writers eventually went so far as to almost pair Dexter up with his adoptive sister, Deb. Now, with the belated Showtime revival on the way, fans are hoping that the series finally doles out a much more satisfying series finale. Chemistry is particularly important when casting a family sitcom, so fans were a little concerned when Julia Butters left American Housewife as the youngest Otto child ahead of its 5th season premiere. Butters brought a notable charm to the character of Anna Cat Otto, so much so that when Quentin Tarantino saw her on his screen, he cast her as serious young actress Trudy in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. That gig wound up being a game changer for the young actor, because all kinds of subsequent offers came in, and she left the ABC series to pursue them. In turn, American Housewife snatched up Giselle Eisenberg, fresh from her 4-season run on the CBS sitcom Life in Pieces. While Eisenberg is undeniably talented, it's been hard for fans to adapt to the change following the show's return in 2020.
Yeah, kids change.
All the witty meta jokes in the world won't convince viewers to keep watching. The season 5 finale ended up being a series finale. ABC canceled American Housewife in 2021. It's no secret that the children on Tim Allen's Last Man Standing changed pretty drastically over the show's run. Amanda Fuller joined the project in season 2 as Kristen Baxter, replacing Alexandra Krosny, who originated the role. Then there's the fact that 4 different actors have played the part of Kristen's son, Boyd, as the character has aged over the years. But it was Molly Ephraim's exit from the series following season 6 that really threw Last Man Standing fans for a loop. As middle child Mandy, Ephraim had her share of meaty storylines that made her a show fixture. But when ABC canceled Last Man Standing in 2017 and Fox revived it for a 7th season run, Ephraim didn't go with it. She had signed up for new projects and was unable to return. Molly McCook was cast in her place. And although the series lasted 3 seasons on Fox before its cancellation in 2021, the character was just never the same. Now, this is a story all about how the casting on Fresh Prince got turned upside down. Fans everywhere are familiar with the behind-the-scenes strife that went down between Will Smith and original Aunt Viv actress Janet Hubert, who played the role for 3 notable seasons before refusing to renew her contract under what she considered to be a bad deal. As a result, she exited the show, and she was replaced by Daphne Maxwell Reid, an actor who was originally considered for the role but refused to audition because a TV show starring a young rapper didn't sound like her thing.
There are a lot of sick, demented perverts out there.
Greetings, all.
Although The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air went on for 3 more seasons with the new Aunt Viv, there was no replacing Hubert's comedic timing. Later, when Smith got the gang back together for the 2020 reunion, he and Hubert sat down for the first time to finally iron things out. The result was the 2 Aunt Vivs meeting for the very first time, as many fans wondered what the show could have been had Hubert stayed on after all. When the 6th season of this comedy kicked off in 1969, viewers were left twitching harder than Samantha in her magical nose when Emmy nominee Dick York was suddenly gone as Darren Stevens. In his place was Dick Sargent, and fan speculation as to what happened kicked into overdrive. As it turned out, York had previously injured his back pretty badly while shooting a movie, and the pain led him down a dark path of prescription pills. Eventually, he realized he had to leave the show, and his career never really recovered. As for Sargent, he stayed in the role until the series finale in 1972. Many fans felt the series wasn't the same though, and it's worth noting that although Sargent won a Most Irreplaceable Replacement TV Land Award in 2006, he was never nominated for an Emmy Award like his predecessor. Have you heard the one about the 2 Beckys? When Roseanne kicked off its first iteration back in 1988, it was actor Lacey Goranson who originated the role of Becky, the eldest child to Dan and Roseanne. Fast forward to season 5, though, and Göransson had enrolled in college, and as a result, she was only available to film part-time, usually for a phone conversation. The following year, producers wanted Becky back in a more permanent role, so they recast her with Sarah Chalke. That was fine, but things got complicated when Göransson briefly returned in season 8 after finishing school. The following year, Chalke was back in the role, and the two Beckys became a running thing that frustrated some viewers. To their relief, both actors were asked back for the Roseanne revival in 2018, but only Göransson returned to play Becky. Producers hired Chalke to instead play a character named Andrea, who asked Becky to be her surrogate in a clever wink to the whole situation. For 5.5 seasons, Nashville fans followed Connie Britton's superstar character, Raina James, as she balanced motherhood, singing, and reconnecting with her one true love, Deacon Claiborne. But that all came crashing down when Britton shocked fans and exited the series in 2017 with a devastating storyline that left her family all alone. It turned out Britton was ready for a change, but she was having a hard time of letting go of the people she worked with. So when CMT revived Nashville for a 5th season after ABC axed it at the end of its run in 2016, Britton decided it was finally time to move on. After the fictional singer's death, there were plenty of other characters to root for, and the show may have ultimately survived. But then the writers introduced Caitlin Doubleday as Jessie Kane, a new love interest for Deacon, and loyal fans were definitely not happy. The series took a bit of a dive, and season 6 ultimately wound up being the last. Throughout its 8-season run, House had a history of replacing characters to switch up the storyline and keep things fresh. But season 7 is when the casting situation really got out of control. That year, Olivia Wilde took a leave of absence from her fan-favorite gig as 13 to film Cowboys and Aliens, while original actor Lisa Edelstein announced her departure as Dr. Lisa Cuddy. Considering the shakeups, it seemed pretty clear to longtime fans that the series was nearing its expiration date. To try and inject new life into the show, producers hired Odette Annable and Charlene Yee to play the latest fellows alongside Amber Tamblyn, but the new crew never quite lived up to the original cast, and as season 8 was in progress, Fox announced that it would also be the show's last. Today, Beverly Hills 90210 is also known as TV's most famous zip code, but before the show earned that status, its original cast had to win over primetime fans with its older actors and soapy storylines. Enter Jason Priestley and Shannon Doherty as the famous Walsh twins, Brandon and Brenda. From the start, fans were into their chemistry with the show's other original cast members. But behind the scenes, it was a different story. Reports of on-set tension between Doherty and the rest of the cast, specifically Jenny Garth, surfaced, and in 1994, Doherty was axed from the show for good. That year, she was replaced by Tiffany Thiessen, who had her own fanbase from her days as Kelly on Saved by the Bell. But not all fans were into the new character, Valerie Malone, a family friend of the Walshes. It was clear Val was meant to replace Brenda, but Saved by the Bell fans weren't sure how to receive this new adult version of the actor. Meanwhile, the character had her moments, but she was no Brenda, and the tone of the series changed with her casting. She stayed on for most of the rest of the series, but to this day, you can ask any 90210 fan which character they relate to most, and you probably won't find many Valerie stans out there.
An actor might be replaced in a television series due to schedule conflicts, lackluster chemistry, behind-the-scenes politics, or even death. Forgotten or not, there's drama behind the curtain. It's New York City in the early 80s. Christine Cagney is a modern single woman and a former fashion model raised in a comfortable middle-class home. Mary Beth Lacey is a no-nonsense working mom from the neighborhood. Together, they are beat-styling cops. They patrol the mean streets of Midtown Manhattan while fighting against institutional sexism in their own ranks. Cagney and Lacey had a passionate fan base that twice saved it from cancellation.
These are women. Macy and...
Lacey, sir. Cagney, Inspector.
Stars Tyne Daly and Sharon Gless dominated the lead actress Emmy category for the entire 6-year run of the series. But Gless wasn't the first actress cast as Cagney, or even the second. The series began with a TV movie starring Daly and MASH star Loretta Swit. When Swit was unavailable for the show, Meg Foster was cast in her place. But after 6 episodes, Gless took over the part. In a wide-ranging 2008 interview, series producer Barney Rosenzweig revealed the reason for Foster's departure was one of compatibility. Her performance was too similar to what Daly was creating as Lacey. He explained, "It became Lacey and Lacey." At the time of the recasting, however, Rosenzweig gave a much different rationale when interviewed by TV Guide, that viewers found Foster not feminine enough, and that together she and Daly read as lesbians, an apparently distasteful situation to viewers in 1982.
If you have a problem, if no one else can help, and if you can find them, maybe you can hire the A-Team.
So goes the famous opening narration of The A-Team, super producer Stephen J. Cannell's 1980s action series about a quartet of Vietnam vets who work as mercenaries in the Los Angeles underground, taking the kinds of suicide missions that no one else is bold or crazy enough to accept. The series stars 60s leading man George Peppard as Hannibal Smith, the leader of the group, Dwight Schultz as pilot Howlin' Mad Murdoch, Rocky III breakout star Mr. T as all B.A. Baracus, B.A. stands for Bad Attitude, and Battlestar Galactica star Dirk Benedict as Master of Disguise Faceman Peck. But the first time around, Faceman had a different face altogether. In the show's pilot episode, Peck is played by Love Boat star Tim Dunnigan. The issue with Dunnigan, appropriately enough, was his face. Though technically old enough to have served in Vietnam, it was decided that, in Dunnigan's own words, he was too young and too tall for the role. Benedict, who had apparently been Cannell and co-creator Frank Lupo's first choice, was cast and played the part for the rest of the series. The Law & Order franchise is no stranger to inventive solutions for temporarily unavailable cast members. Law & Order Special Victims Unit premiered in 1999, the first franchise spin-off. The series follows the dedicated detectives of the sex crimes-focused Special Victims Unit, and delves further into the personal lives of its leads than the original show ever does. This is especially true for Mariska Hargitay as Detective Olivia Benson and Christopher Maloney as her volatile partner Elliot Stabler. In 2006, it was announced that Hargitay was taking a short leave of absence from the show to accommodate the final months of her pregnancy. In her place, the show brought in Connie Nielsen as Detective Danny Beck, partnering her with Stabler for a 6-episode run in the middle of Season 8. Her character was clearly meant to be temporary. Still, some fans weren't pleased by her presence. In a 2020 interview, Nielsen said she still gets Danny Beck hate mail. Tony Shalhoub's defective detective in the comedy series Monk was always socially awkward with a touch of obsessive-compulsive disorder. Various flashbacks through the seasons and a visit from his brother confirmed that his conditions were always present within him. But the moment that turned his life upside down to the point that he had to leave the San Francisco Police Department and hire a nurse to assist him was his wife's death. His wife, Trudy, was murdered by car bomb. Monk begins after Trudy's death, but the mystery surrounding it is the show's primary ongoing story, reaching from the first episode all the way to the last. In the first 2 seasons, Trudy, played by Stelina Rusic, is represented by a few silent flashbacks and photographs on Monk's mantle. Starting with Season 3's flashback-heavy episode, Mr. Monk and the Game Show, however, Trudy is played in flashbacks by Melora Hardin, an actress probably best known for playing Jan Levinson in The Office.
And I have to thank you for that other thing, too. Well, marrying me. Oh, look.
You're welcome.
Hardin would appear a few more times, most notably in the 2-part series finale where her murder is finally solved. Oddly, as the series went on, the props department used photos of both Rusic and Hardin interchangeably, and even sat them next to each other in Monk's house. Generational trauma is at the heart of David Chase's landmark series The Sopranos, the HBO mob drama that in many ways revolutionized television, opening the medium up to a more mature serialized mode of storytelling. Tony Soprano is a New Jersey mob boss who is profoundly depressed and dissatisfied with his life in ways that he can't articulate. Much of his trauma can be traced back to his mother Livia and Uncle Junior, as well as the ghost of his father, Johnny Boy. Beginning with Season 2, Tony's wayward sister Janice arrives on the scene. She's dealt with her tumultuous upbringing by moving west and embracing New Age philosophies, but can't help but get drawn back into their life. Tony and Janice aren't the only Soprano siblings, however. There's one more, a little sister who got out and stayed out, Barbara, played in a handful of episodes by Nicole Burdett. Barbara lives out of town and is rarely involved with the Soprano family business. The character is absent from Seasons 3 and 4, then returns for 10 episodes in the show's last 2 seasons, this time played by Danielle DeVecchio. Even with her increased presence in the series' final run, Barbara was never a major character, and her role was by far the smallest in the family. NBC's Hannibal, based on the best-selling novels by Thomas Harris, was unlike any show on network television. Baroque, gorgeous, and gruesome, series creator Brian Fuller crafted a bloody thriller for 3 seasons that was beautiful to watch, even if you were watching through your fingers.
This is the nightmare that followed him out of his dreams.
Centered around haunted FBI profiler Will Graham and a psychiatrist, the erudite gourmet Hannibal Lecter, the series follows Graham's attempts to catch various serial killers and protect his own fragile sanity, while Lecter works to keep Graham and his FBI boss Jack Crawford from discovering that he is a brutal cannibalistic killer himself. Season 2 works in elements from Harris's sequel Hannibal, introducing meatpacking heiress Margot Verger and her sadistic, incestuous brother Mason, played by Michael Pitt. Hannibal punishes Mason for his abuse of Margot and for his general impoliteness by drugging him and forcing him to mutilate and eat his own face. In Season 3, Mason returns for revenge, paralyzed from the neck down and horribly disfigured.
I would like you to begin arrangements for Dr. Hannibal Lecter to be eaten alive.
But the actor underneath the prosthetics is not Pitt, but actor Joe Anderson, as Pitt declined to return to the role after Season 2. Premiering on NBC the same year as Hannibal with a somewhat similar premise was The Blacklist. James Spader stars as Raymond Red Reddington, a master criminal who's evaded capture for decades. Reddington turns himself into the FBI in exchange for immunity, promising to help the Bureau track down the world's most dangerous criminals, his blacklist. But of course, there's a catch. Reddington will only work with rookie profiler Elizabeth Keene. While the series has a case of the week structure, with Red and Keene bringing down one illegal operation or another, the central mystery of Reddington's true identity and his connection to Liz power the show through 10 high-intrigue seasons. A major clue to the mystery of both Red and Liz's backgrounds dropped with the introduction of Brian Dennehy's character Dominic Wilkerson in Season 3. As a former KGB agent posing as a retired systems analyst, Dom has a long, messy history with Red, one that somehow intersects with Liz's own background. After a handful of appearances through the years, Dom becomes integral to the show's ongoing storyline in Season 7, but producers were thrown a tragic curveball when Dennehy passed away in April 2020. Rather than rework the upcoming season scripts, the powers that be decided to recast the role with actor Ron Raines, who played Dom for 3 episodes in Season 8. Sometimes a show recasts a role due to the death of an actor, but other times it's due to the death of the show itself. That was the case with All Rise, the CBS courtroom drama that premiered in 2019, in which Simone Missick starred as Lola Carmichael, a former prosecutor turned Los Angeles County's newest judge.
I've been in court before. I know how this works.
You think you know, but you don't. Not yet.
The series followed the ins and outs of her daily caseload, as well as the lives of the men and women who worked at the courthouse, her fellow judges, her old prosecutor colleagues, clerks, bailiffs, reporters, and more. Lola's husband, FBI agent Robin Taylor, was played for the first 2 seasons by Todd Williams. The show was canceled by CBS in May 2021. Several months later, however, it was saved from oblivion by the Oprah Winfrey Network, and a 3rd and final season aired on OWN in 2022.
Instead of asking the cop why I was being zip-tied, you asked me what I did wrong.
Season 3 took place a year after the events of Season 2, which saw Lola have a baby and lose her judgeship after defending an innocent woman from arrest. Most of the original cast returned for the final season, with the exception of Williams, who had booked the Amazon young adult series Panic. As a result, actor Christian Keyes took over as Robin for Season 3. Each season of the Breaking Bad prequel Better Call Saul begins with an enigmatic black and white sequence following the gray, paranoid life of Jimmy McGill, formerly known as New Mexico criminal lawyer Saul Goodman, now living as Cinnabon manager Gene Takovic after the explosive events of the final season of Breaking Bad. Starting in Season 3, however, those opening scenes coalesce into an ongoing story as a panic attack puts Gene in the hospital. Season 4 begins with Gene's cab ride back from the hospital, where his driver has an Albuquerque Isotopes decal on his mirror and keeps shooting glances at his passenger. Season 5 reveals that the driver, Jeff, played by Don Harvey, does indeed recognize Gene as Saul, but his motivations remain unclear. The 6th and final season forgoes the black and white scenes until the final 3 episodes, where Gene decides not to run again, but to confront Jeff and neutralize him via an old-fashioned slip-and Jimmy con game. For these final episodes, however, Harvey was not available due to his commitment to the HBO series We Own This City. Pat Healy stepped into the role.
Jeffy, this is Mr. Takovic.
Call me Gene.
Harvey's original take had a hint of menace, while Healy's was more of a sad sack divorcee, living with his mother and desperate for a taste of the Saul Goodman lifestyle. Law & Order and its spin-offs have had no shortage of cast turnover over the decades since its 1990 premiere. Part of this is baked into the premise of the show. Detectives and attorneys come in and out on a regular basis, and the departures are explained by transfer, retirement, arrest, or even death. The eras of the show come to be defined by who's running the 2 separate but equally important groups in the criminal justice system. Seasons 4 through 6 encompass Jill Hennessy's turn as Assistant District Attorney Claire Kincaid.
A search warrant? With this? You can't be serious.
Toward the end of Hennessy's run on the show, she appeared in character as Kincaid on a 1996 episode of Homicide: Life on the Street. While it's not exactly a Law & Order spin-off, it existed in the same television universe and occasionally shared characters, most memorably Richard Belzer's detective John Munch. Filming Homicide on location in Baltimore, however, meant that Hennessy missed a few days of filming the Season 6 Law & Order episode Corpus Delicti. Luckily, she had a novel solution to this problem. Her identical twin sister Jacqueline could step in as Kincaid for a few background courtroom shots.